What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS core plays for this week's Waste Management Phoenix Open, one of the most electric weeks of the entire year. We've got 16, all of the crowds there around TPC Scottsdale, and one of, if not the best field of the entire year, at least pound for pound. The major championships, a little bit more prestige, but when you're going to qualifications, you're looking at just pure talent level. This field is as star-studded as it's going to get. So in this video, in this core picks breakdown, going to go over the top of the Draftkings pricing and bring you 4 players priced $8,000 and above that I have my eye on for large field GPPs. Not only are these players solid course fits, players that you should be considering, whether it's for recent form, course history, or of course just course fit, or maybe they're low-owned pivot plays that have just as much upside as their peers. So definitely a lot to get into here at the top of the board. Let's go ahead and get this thing rocking. As we typically do with these videos, let's go ahead and start with a look at our key stats. So with first things first, TPC Scottsdale, a staple on the PGA Tour, something we see year in and year out, and really it has a clear-cut identity. Kind of similar to a Farmers Insurance Open, Torrey Pines, the South Course, a ball striker's paradise. You get a similar kind of effect this week here at Scottsdale. It's a TPC track. We know that it's really set up for some of the elite tier players. A lot of the distance is rewarded around TPC tracks, and you also get an emphasis on iron play. Both of those are things that are crossover here for this week at the Waste Management, and even more so from the approach side. You have raised, shaved off greens that when you miss, you're penalized heavily. And a lot of people I've heard kind of say that, the around the green shots aren't all that difficult around this track. I would heavily push back on that. Anytime you have shaved down fairways, little chip off, runoff areas, like you have here around Scottsdale, it leads to creativity that is needed with the shots around the green. And you've seen, especially when you look at some of the correlation data, a lot of the around the green players, especially some of the elite tier guys that tend to be better around the green, find success here. Most notably, guys like Hideki Matsuyama. Brooks Koepka, while he's not an elite tier around the green player, we've seen him find plenty of success at firm and fast courses. A desert course like TPC Scottsdale plays kind of similar to some of the major championships in terms of around the green play. So that's something that kind of stuck out just from tee to green, whether it's off the tee, making sure that you're keeping yourself out of the desert, the plethora of bunkers around TPC Scottsdale, whether going into greens, right, making sure you're keeping yourself in position, or around the green when you miss greens, really got to be able to make up for it too. The one key factor that's kind of de-emphasized here would be the putting. So you can see off the tee, I'm looking at distance, accuracy, maybe not as important this week as most. Approach play, always going to be super important there. It's worth noting at opportunities gained. Definitely something I'm factoring a little bit more this week. Guys that can go low, stick it to 5 to 10 feet. The greens around TPC Scottsdale tend to be tiered. They're not hard to putt when you're outside of like 30 to 40 feet, especially to get down to 2. But if you're looking for solid birdie looks, you really got to be in that 10 to 15 foot range. That's what you've seen over the years. They tend to be relatively flat greens when you get to the right tier. So when you're within that 10 to 15 foot circle, you're going to see a lot of guys making putts. So that's another reason why putting's a little bit de-emphasized. Or because of how flat the greens are, how simple they are once you get into position. Guys like Hideki have won here multiple times. Brooks Koepka, one of the more inconsistent putters on the PGA Tour, yet he has a really good track record around here. I mean, John Rahm, same kind of thing, Xander Schauffele, and all of those players are elite of the elite when it comes to their tee to green play. So looking at birdie or better percentage, par 5 scoring as well here, par 4 scoring from 450 to 500 yards, something I'm taking a look at. Down here with the comp courses, a few of them I talked about on my course breakdown video. Of course, this is where I'll go over all of the information I'm talking about right here. But a few of the Florida tracks that we have this week, it's a Bermuda grass surface overseeded with a POA and a ryegrass mix. So a unique surface. You have a similar kind of track or similar kind of grass type down at the Valspar Players Championship. Shriners Children's Open has the same kind of greens. PGA National Championship course too. So a lot of crossover that can be made from these tracks, but a little bit less course comp history this week that I'd say that we usually have on the PGA Tour. I mean, typically there's at least like 7-8 courses I'm looking at. Some of the weighting is a little bit higher than what we have this week. So not going crazy with the comp course history, but course history just around TPC Scottsdale, we've seen is heavily correlated to success. I mean, Brooks, multiple time winner, won for his first time in a while there at TPC Scottsdale a few years back. Guys like Hideki, multiple time champions. Ches Reavie seems to just make a habit of going out there and finishing in the top 5. So definitely something that you want to consider this week on top of a lot of the other stats that we've looked at here. Hey guys, if you want access to everything you see in these videos, my spreadsheets, access to all the shots gained data, my modeling, key stats, everything I use in these videos for my analysis, make sure to check out my Patreon page. On there, I post all my ownership projections, player poll, as well as my prize picks and underdog slips for the week for every round of the PGA Tour. So a ton of data, whether you're playing on the prop side or, of course, for DFS, like a lot of you in this video are. Make sure to check it out. A huge value in just $10 a month for everything I have to offer. With that aside, let's go ahead and get into the core plays. Our first core play is going to be Scottie Scheffler, so perhaps a little bit of a surprise. Most of you were expecting me to say Rory McIlroy or Jon Rahm, and both of them are slam dunk picks. I didn't have to tell you to play a Jon Rahm coming in winning, like 2 of his last 3 starts, or Rory McIlroy. He's pretty much on the same stretch of form, gaining double digits when it comes to the shots gained in 5 straight starts. Whether it's internationally, PGA Tour has just been unbelievable for the last 3-4 months at this point. But Scottie Scheffler, perhaps the one man up top, and I'm including Tony Finau, he's going to get some ownership this week as well. Maybe the one man that's going a little bit overlooked, and it happens to be last year's champion. You take a look at the event history, of course, he's played here a few times. In fact, in 2020, when he was brand new to the PGA Tour, ended up missing the cut, 7th place, and then ended up winning last year, of course, showing off all that potential. But what I love about Scottie is not only the recent form, which we'll get to here in a second, we know it's excellent, it's the putting on this, specific type of green. So you can see over here, G, this category has putting on Bermuda with an overseed. And while all the courses that are overseeded and that are Bermuda aren't overseeded with the same strains of POA and bent grass, this week in a lot of the courses down in Florida, it plays similar, right? Whether it's a POA trivialis or just regular POA nua, whether it's a ryegrass or something that's a little bit closer to a traditional bent grass out there mixed in as the third hybrid, it doesn't really matter, right? They look the same. We can't really characterize each golf course individually. So what I've done here is I've taken a look at all the events on the PGA Tour where we have this kind of situation and just averaged out the putting stats. And you can see that Scottie Scheffler, no surprise, is getting 0.38 shots per round with the putter. That includes this event clearly, but also the Arnold Palmer Invitational. I don't believe he played the Honda Classic, but it would have included that Valspar Championship. And a few other events on the PGA Tour as well. So Scottie seems to like these kind of greens. It makes sense as he has a couple wins on this surface already to this point. And like I mentioned, the ball striking, the tee to green play specifically, has been top notch of late. It hasn't quite been on the same level as like a Rory or a Jon Rahm. Some of their shots gained, it's worth noting, comes from the European Tour. So they're actually, getting represented a little bit better than they're playing in reality. But Scottie still gaining in all 3 tee to green categories. Close to 2/3 of a stroke off the tee, a little bit over half a stroke per round on approach, and around the green, while he's typically a little bit better, he's still gaining right around 0.2 shots per round. So from tee to green, you're looking at somebody gaining 1.3, almost 1.4 shots per round. And overall, we know the kind of pedigree player he is. He can show up at any golf course, compete, win at pretty much any event, but specifically at events that he's won at before on a green surface that he seems to be pretty familiar with, you'd think that he'd be getting some attention, but because he's priced in between a Finau who said, he's had a great track record around here, understand the play, just like these 2 guys up top, Scottie Scheffler is going to be underrepresented. So it's early in the week, it's here on a Monday, so it's kind of hard to give you an accurate gauge on ownership, but I'm expecting him to be 15% or lower, if not closer to 10%, just because of how many people are going to want to get to a Rory or Jon Rahm up there. So $10,300, last year's champion. I mean, the recent form speaks for itself too, right? 11th at the Amex, top 10 at the TOC, 2nd at the Hero World Challenge, top 10 at the Houston Open, just checking all the boxes. And I get it, right? There are guys that are quote unquote better plays around him, but if they end up coming in with twice or three times the ownership as somebody like a Scottie Scheffler, which at this point I think is realistic. I know it's early to be making this sort of predictions. I'm kind of expecting that kind of differential up top, that it's going to be a no-brainer for me to have Scottie Scheffler in at least 30, maybe 35% of my lineups. All right, next up we've got Justin Thomas. He's there at $9,800, and luckily he's priced up to a certain point where he's still going to be a pivot play. If he was super cheap, like $9,400, like he was there at the Farmers, he would be mega chalk, right? But now we're getting him priced in between a Morikawa, Cantlay, Max Homa coming in off a win. I mean, Xander Schauffele, though he has those back concerns, has been playing great golf. Those concerns are pretty much behind him at this point anyways. JT, probably going to be the pivot play in this range, and given his track record around here, yeah, you would expect him to get quite a bit of attention. Pretty much a top 17 finish every time he shows up here. That's worth noting. Before the 17th place finish, he had a few missed cuts in there. So though over the last 5 starts, it looks a little bit better than reality. It's just been lights out here, right? 8th place, 13th, a couple 3rd place finishes there 3 and 4 years ago, and it makes sense. He's one of the best tee to green players on tour. In fact, one of the best tee to green players probably of all time. His putting has always been the outlier, has always been, what's held him back from being the world number 1, to be quite frank with you. But of late, it's been the approach play. The putter has been cold. I mean, that's not a surprise whatsoever. But this approach play being right around a neutral has absolutely killed him. You take a look at the recent form, you'll see a top 25 at the Farmers. That is well below his expectations. Top 25 at the TOC is one of the worst performances he could have had. Relatively limited field there. So I think there were like 38 players. And then top 5 at the Hero was okay, but there were no shots gained metrics there. So it's been quite some time since Justin Thomas has played to his potential, but what you're betting on here is the long-term pedigree. We know he is, like I said, one of the best tee to green players of all time, let alone one of the best in this field. And at $9,800, given his track record around here, I would not be surprised for him to win this. He's never went out there and won the Waste Management. It's an event that I think he's going to win at some point, whether it's the skill set, whether it's his mentality when it comes to these high energy events. He really relishes, first off, the energy from the crowd. He really tries to build off of that. And I think when he gets into contention, you can see those top 3 finishes over there, he tends to make it count. So JT, from the skill set, you got to love that coming in. Putting on these greens has been pretty decent over the years. You can see he's a slight gainer, which is a huge positive over what he's done of late, right? Like I said, losing over half a stroke per round with the putter. So the fact that he's a positive on these greens for his career, and again, the putter has never really been a consistent asset for Justin Thomas. So any green surface where he's a positive on it is going to be a huge advantage over his baseline. You got to like it. So I'm hoping the ownership stays low. I'm projecting him right now for close to like 10, maybe like 15% ownership at the very most. And if that's going to be the case, he's a pivot play I'm going to absolutely love getting to towards the top of the board and going to be playing in bunches despite not the best recent form. And next up, our third core pick, going to be Sungjae Im at $9,200. And this one, a little bit more creative, I'd say. And what I like here is the tee to green play, right? It's, I'm going to sound like a broken record at this point, but you're looking for players that can get it done from tee to green. And on the greens, Sungjae Im, he's been pretty decent of late. You can see he's gaining close to half a stroke per round. There was a stretch last year, I'd say from the middle of last year towards the end of last season, up until the Tour Championship, where he broke through and really figured out the putter, where he couldn't make a thing for his life. I think at the Open Championship, he lost over 8 strokes putting in a single round, not at the single event, in a single round at that golf tournament. And it was real ugly, but he's figured it out of late, and that's kind of carried him to some of these recent performances. You can see of late, he has a top 5 finish, top 20 finish, missed cut there. Of course, he was a core pick that week, so RIP to us that ended up playing him there. But top 13 finish, another top 10 finish out there has really gone him back to the Sungjae Im we love. And this week, I have a feeling he's going to go a little bit overlooked. I know he had that top 5 at the Farmers, which really is probably, I mean, it's a perfect course fit, right? It's pretty much the same kind of skill set for Farmers as what you want this week here at the Waste Management. And I don't think he's going to be mega chalk. By mega chalk, I think he's probably going to be like 18 to 20% owned, but he's not going to be 25 to 28% owned like he probably should be. He's a perfect course fit. The event history has been pretty solid too. 3 made cuts, 1 top 10 finish, 1 17th place finish there 2 years ago. Didn't play here last year, which was surprising. I'm actually not sure why I didn't play here. Might have been injury, might have just been prior commitment to another event, so on and so forth. But has been decent when he showed up here to Scottsdale. The skill set makes perfect sense. In the recent form, like I said, is almost completely carried by that putter. So if he can continue to be a machine from tee to green, continue to putt well on these greens too, which is kind of the icing on the cake here, I think we're on to something. And here's the thing with the greens, okay? So Sungjae has this track record, or I should say this reputation maybe, of being a Florida swing player, of going down to the Honda, right? Valspar, Players Championship a few times, and showing up, making a bunch of putts. And a few people have gone, oh, well, it's Bermuda grass. That's why Sungjae Im is so good there. On regular Bermuda, he's not that good. But when you put him on these overseeded greens and you look at those tracks specifically, he's gaining over half a stroke per round, which isn't that great compared to what he's done over the last 36 rounds, right? Where he's gaining close to half a stroke per round. But if you compare that to all the other surfaces on the PGA Tour, it is by far his best, right? So don't get that confused here. This is compared to his last 36 rounds, where he's been on absolute fire with that flat stick. If anything, that's reassurance that he'll be able to continue that kind of trend. And given his consistency off the tee, he's going to hit a bunch of fairways, hits it a long way. The approach play has been a huge asset for him over the last 36 rounds. I think he's one of the highest floor players on the entire slate, but also brings you that top end upside given his familiarity on the surface. Alrighty, our last core play, probably my top pick of the week considering price, ownership, all that sort of fun stuff, is Sam Burns at $8,600. Not only is he probably too cheap, but in terms of top end upside, this is a guy who could win this golf tournament. In fact, he was my first click this week when it came to outright betting. Put an unhealthy amount on him at 55 to 1. The last time we had such a bet was Max Homa. Went out there, ended up getting the dub for us, and there's a lot to like with Sam Burns. So where do we even start? So let's look at the putting to begin. So if you take a look at the putting on Bermuda with overseed, he's gaining over a stroke per round. And you might say, oh, like a Taylor Montgomery, that's a sample size thing, right? He's played at one event with these sort of greens. No, Sam Burns has 53 measured rounds, including 3 of his wins at events with these sort of greens. Valspar, where he got 2 of those wins, has shown up time and time again at greens with this overseed, and of late has not been his best, right? You can see he's losing in both ball striking categories, which is just a complete bizarro world for Sam Burns. We know him as one of the best ball strikers on tour. The putter, he's also an elite tier putter. So if you're looking for an informed golfer, somebody that has good course history, run the other direction because he, obviously missed 3 of his 4 cuts. The shots gained metrics suck. But you're talking about a player who 90% of the time is one of the best off the tee players in the field, right? Maybe in this elite tier field, he's not top 5, but he's certainly a top 10, top 15 driver at the very worst. Approach play, especially when he's in form, he's usually one of the top 10, top 15 players on tour, and he absolutely tears up these greens. Count me in. I do not care if he's coming in with absolutely no form. So if we take a look at the recent finishes, you'll see in 11th last time out, that's pretty decent. 32nd at the TOC is dog shit. 12th there at the Hero was a pretty dog shit there as well. Ended up withdrawing there back in 8 starts ago at the Houston Open. So not necessarily the prettiest track record, but he's had some time off, right? He hasn't played all that much of late, and kind of like a Justin Thomas, he's going to be royally under-owned because of that form. So if we're willing to take a shot on him, hoping he goes out there and returns to his baseline, what we usually expect from a Sam Burns, the sky's the limit. He could easily win this golf tournament. And if you take a look at the event history, it's evident, right? He has those 3 missed cuts, but did have the top 25 finish there 2 years ago. You take a look at the shots gained metrics, they haven't been all that pretty, but though he's right around a neutral off the tee, a slight loser on approach, over this stretch, he still has golf tournaments where he gained over 4 strokes off the tee, still gained significantly on approach in 2 out of the 8 events that a lot of these metrics are pulled from. So it looks a little bit uglier than it was in reality because of some of the real poor performances that he had, most notably the Tournament of Champions, where he completely ejected himself from contention. So maybe that keeps people off of him, right? Especially people that are looking at models, metrics, that sort of thing. And I tend to try and look at the positives, right? Long term, one of the better ball strikers in the field, loves this surface, and I have that uncomfortable feeling about him, like I did there with the Max Homa a few weeks ago, and fired quite the hefty bet there on Burnsy. All right, fellas, that is all I've got for this week's Core Picks video. Before you hopping out of here, go ahead and comment down below who you've got winning this week. For me, and also make sure it's not a 10K option, right? Don't say Rory, don't say John Rahm, that sort of thing. Don't even say Scottie Scheffler. That's just the cop-out answer. I'm going to go with $8,600 Sam Burns. Like I said, a little bit of an uncomfortable feeling about him this week. Just the perfect course fit, loves these greens, and it's about time for him to go out there and get a dub. He tends to win when people least expect it, right? There at Colonial, nobody picked him that week to go out there and win that golf tournament. It's feeling like a good old Sam Burnsy week. So I'm looking forward to it, guys. Go ahead and comment who you're taking down in the chat. Also, go ahead and like the video before you hop on out of here. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. That way you don't miss any of the content in the future. Tomorrow morning, we'll have our value plays dropping, our plays priced $8,000 below on DraftKings that I'll have my eye on for GPPs. We'll have our Wednesday live stream at 7 p.m. Eastern time. There, we'll go over all of your live questions, a weather report, GPP chalk, everything you need to know going into this week. So looking forward to it, guys. I appreciate you stopping by, showing support, consuming all the content that you do here. It helps me grow this brand, right? Helps me do this for a living, something I thoroughly enjoy, and I owe it all to you guys. So I appreciate that, like I said, and best of luck with all of your lineups, all your outright bets this week, and let's get this cash.